Marcus Leone, a rising culinary genius, and Lila Hampton, a rival chef consumed by obsession, collided in a deadly game of flavor and envy. One secret ingredient would change their lives forever. Marcus Leone's journey into the culinary world began in the most unassuming way. Born in a small town where everyone knew each other, he grew up in a modest household where food was more than sustenance. It was a way to bring people together. From a young age, Marcus showed a rare talent. While other children played outside, he experimented with herbs, spices, and flavors in the cramped kitchen of his family home. His creations were simple at first, baked goods and basic sauces, but there was something about the way he combined ingredients that left people talking. Neighbors would come over just to taste what he had made that day, marveling at the depth of flavor and the surprising harmony of tastes that seemed impossible for someone so young. Word spread quickly, drawing food critics from neighboring cities. Reviews called his cooking revolutionary, daring, and magical. One article described his signature dish, a roasted chicken with a glaze that seemed almost alive with flavor, as the kind of taste that changes the way you think about food forever. Patrons speculated endlessly about what made his dishes so extraordinary. Some thought it was an exotic spice, others believed it was a rare herb, and a few whispered that Marcus had discovered something the world had never known. The mystery of his secret ingredient became a legend. Local chefs tried to replicate his dishes, but every attempt failed. Marcus's talent was not only in his choice of ingredients, but in the timing, the texture, and the way he coaxed flavors out of even the simplest components. Yet beneath the admiration, jealousy was beginning to simmer. Competing chefs watched his rising fame with growing frustration, plotting ways to uncover his secret and outshine him. Despite the whispers and growing envy, Marcus remained focused on his passion. He spent long hours in the kitchen, testing new combinations and perfecting every dish before it left his hands. His dedication was relentless, bordering on obsession, but it was this drive that made Savory Secrets more than a bistro. It became a place of wonder. Diners left with satisfied palates, curious minds, and an unshakable urge to return, hoping to experience once more the magic that Marcus had created. In the quiet moments before the restaurant opened, Marcus would sometimes smile to himself, knowing that the world would never truly guess the full secret behind his culinary genius. Across town, Lila Hampton watched Marcus Leone's rise with a mix of admiration and growing frustration. Her own restaurant, the Golden Fork, had once been popular, but lately it struggled to attract diners. Reviews were lukewarm, and even loyal patrons seemed to be drawn to Marcus's bistro instead. Lila had always been talented, trained in some of the finest culinary schools, but she lacked the elusive touch that made Marcus's dishes unforgettable. Every article, every social media post praising Savory Secrets felt like a personal slight. She tried to convince herself it was just good publicity for the town, but deep down, a gnawing jealousy began to take root. At first, Lila's interest in Marcus's secret ingredient was purely professional. She visited Savory Secrets often, observing the presentation of his dishes, the way his staff moved in the kitchen, and the reactions of his diners. But fascination slowly transformed into obsession. Lila found herself thinking about Marcus constantly, imagining how she could replicate his success. She started experimenting late into the night, mixing spices and herbs in ways she had never dared before. Her kitchen became a laboratory of trial and error, filled with half-finished sauces and burnt attempts at his signature flavors. Nothing worked. Every dish she created fell flat or tasted overly familiar, lacking the spark that made Marcus's cooking magical. Desperation pushed Lila further. She began asking questions to anyone who might have knowledge of Marcus's methods. Waiters, delivery drivers, and even occasional diners were subtly interrogated, though she kept her inquiries casual. Occasionally she offered small bribes to staff members who might be tempted to share secrets, but Marcus's team was loyal and careful. Still, every failed attempt only intensified her determination. The town, oblivious to her growing fixation, continued to celebrate Marcus' success. diners flocked to Savory's secrets, praising the creativity and depth of his dishes. Meanwhile, Lila quietly plotted in the shadows, her admiration for Marcus entwined with envy, frustration, and a hunger for recognition. It was this obsession, subtle at first, but steadily intensifying, that would push her toward actions no one could have anticipated. The line between professional rivalry and criminal intent had begun to blur, setting the stage for a chain of events that would shock the town and change the lives of both chefs forever. The night of the food festival was electric, the town buzzing with excitement as chefs from across the region gathered to showcase their finest creations. Marcus Leone had been preparing for weeks, planning a dish that would not only impress the judges, but also leave a lasting mark on the culinary world. He had worked tirelessly in his kitchen, carefully selecting each ingredient, testing every combination until it achieved the perfect balance of flavor, aroma, and presentation. This dish was meant to be his masterpiece, the culmination of years of dedication and experimentation. As the festival began, Marcus's booth drew an immediate crowd. People were eager to taste the legendary flavors that had made Savory's secrets famous. Diners sampled his dish, their faces lighting up with delight. Cameras flashed, and food critics scribbled notes furiously, trying to capture the essence of Marcus's creation in words. Everything seemed perfect. For a moment it felt as though Marcus's lifelong dream had been realized until chaos struck. Within hours, festival organizers were overwhelmed by reports of sudden illness. Guests clutched their stomachs, faces pale, and several collapsed, needing urgent medical attention. Panic spread quickly, and the festival was thrown into disarray. The first suspicion naturally fell on Marcus. It seemed impossible that anyone could have fallen ill after consuming his food without some error on his part. Investigators combed through his booth, testing ingredients, utensils, and cooking surfaces. Marcus, horrified, insisted he had followed every step carefully, that his kitchen had always been immaculate, and that the ingredients were fresh and safe. Yet the evidence appeared damning. Traces of a rare toxin had been detected in his signature dish, a chemical capable of causing nausea, dizziness, and even more severe symptoms if ingested in sufficient quantities. News of the incident spread like wildfire. Local media reported the story with sensational headlines, branding Marcus as a chef whose obsession with flavors may have turned dangerous. Social media erupted, with some calling for his arrest and others defending his innocence. Marcus's loyal patrons were confused and scared. They had trusted him for years, and now his reputation seemed to hang by a thread. Behind the scenes, however, the truth was far more sinister. Someone had deliberately tampered with Marcus's dish, introducing the toxin in a way that imitated the flavor of his secret ingredient. The complexity of the act suggested careful planning, intimate knowledge of his cooking methods, and a deep-seated desire to destroy him. Marcus, unaware of the plot against him, could only watch helplessly as his life and career began to unravel. The incident marked a turning point. Marcus realized that his rise to fame had made him a target, that the mystery and allure of his secret ingredient were now a double-edged sword. What had once been a source of admiration had become a dangerous magnet for envy and malice. As investigators dug deeper, the web of deceit surrounding the festival slowly began to emerge, hinting at an obsession that would soon escalate into a full-blown culinary crime. Marcus Leone could feel the weight of suspicion pressing down on him. Days after the food festival, the town seemed divided. Some still supported him, confident in his innocence, but others whispered that his brilliance had always skirted the edge of recklessness. His once celebrated bistro, Savory's Secrets, became a place of quiet scrutiny. Diners entered hesitantly, eyes scanning the kitchen, imagining what might have gone wrong. Marcus moved among them with careful composure, serving dishes with the same precision and passion as always, but inside, a storm of anxiety churned. He knew the truth. He had done nothing wrong, yet proving it would be far more complicated than he imagined. Authorities intensified their investigation, leaving no corner of the bistro unchecked. Inspectors examined every pot, pan, and utensil. They tested ingredients, traced suppliers, and scrutinized Marcus's meticulous records. Everything appeared normal, too normal, almost. Marcus had always been thorough, labeling and documenting every component of every dish. Yet the presence of the toxin at the festival suggested a deliberate act, one meant to frame him. Despite the evidence mounting in his favor, the cloud of suspicion was difficult to dispel. Meanwhile, Lila Hampton observed from a distance, careful to conceal her satisfaction. She watched Marcus struggle, noting the stress etched into his usually confident demeanor. At first, she justified her actions to herself, telling herself that she was only curious about his success, but the satisfaction she felt at seeing him questioned, even temporarily, was undeniable. Her obsession had crossed the line from professional rivalry to something more sinister. Every investigative report she read, every news article highlighting Marcus's plight, only fueled her fascination and envy. She began to plan her next move, considering how she could benefit from his misfortune without revealing her hand. As investigators delved deeper, patterns began to emerge. Deliveries from unusual suppliers, discrepancies in storage schedules, unexplained late-night activity caught their attention. Marcus had no knowledge of these irregularities. The person responsible had carefully orchestrated them to avoid detection, yet each new clue seemed to point in directions that only complicated the case further. Detectives were torn between suspicion of a malicious outsider and the possibility of insider knowledge. Marcus, meanwhile, spent long nights reviewing every detail of his own operations, desperate to uncover the truth before it was too late. The town's perception of Marcus shifted in subtle ways. Friends who had once celebrated his talent now avoided him, afraid of being associated with scandal. Critics, who had praised his creativity, began questioning his judgment. The very mystery that had once drawn crowds to Savory's secrets now cast a shadow over his reputation. Marcus felt isolated, frustrated that his years of dedication and hard work could be undermined by someone else's deliberate actions. Despite the growing tension, Marcus refused to give up. He knew that solving the puzzle required patience, observation, and unwavering attention to detail, the very qualities that had made him a successful chef. Each day brought new challenges, but also small victories. A supplier confirmed his deliveries were untouched. A security camera revealed no irregularities within the bistro. Piece by piece, he began reconstructing the night of the festival, retracing every step and analyzing every ingredient. Little did he know the true culprit was watching, waiting, and preparing to escalate their obsession into something far more dangerous. Detectives decided to take a closer look at Marcus Leone's kitchen, installing hidden cameras to observe his every move. The idea was to capture any unusual behavior, any sign that might explain how a toxin had found its way into his dish. Marcus, although frustrated and angry at being suspected, complied fully. He understood that transparency was the only way to clear his name, even if it felt like a violation of his privacy. Day after day, cameras recorded every step, chopping, sautéing, seasoning, and plating. Yet nothing appeared out of the ordinary. Marcus worked with the same care, precision, and passion he always had, unaware that someone had manipulated events to frame him. While the footage seemed to confirm his innocence, investigators noticed a pattern in the deliveries arriving at Savory Secrets. Most were from standard suppliers, predictable and familiar, but a few packages stood out. They arrived at odd hours, sometimes after midnight, from unknown companies that provided ingredients Marcus had never ordered. The boxes were small, neatly sealed, and contained substances that resembled harmless culinary components, but laboratory tests revealed subtle traces of chemicals that could be dangerous if used improperly. The deliveries were carefully timed so that Marcus would likely never handle them directly. Someone knew exactly how to exploit the rhythm of his kitchen to introduce the toxin without leaving a trace of their identity. As the investigators dug deeper, Marcus himself began to piece together the puzzle. He examined every staff member, every supplier, and every step of his cooking process, looking for the missing link. His mind, trained to think in layers of flavor, began to apply the same logic to the mystery. Patterns emerged, deliveries that didn't match invoices, ingredients that were slightly off in texture, and subtle inconsistencies in the storage logs. Marcus realized that this was no accident. He was being framed by someone with intimate knowledge of kitchens, ingredients, and the art of flavor manipulation. The town continued to speculate about the cause of the poisoning. Some blamed Marcus's ambition, suggesting that he had pushed culinary boundaries too far. Others whispered about sabotage, but no one suspected the truth. A rival's obsession had reached a dangerous extreme. Marcus's loyal customers visited cautiously, some whispering words of support, others nervously scanning the kitchen as though danger could strike at any moment. Every plate that left his kitchen now carried a weight of scrutiny, a silent reminder that even his genius could be weaponized against him. Meanwhile, the real culprit moved quietly, observing Marcus's reactions to the investigation. Lila Hampton watched news updates and social media coverage, noting how investigators were being misled by the precise timing and placement of the suspicious deliveries. Each new discovery by Marcus or the authorities seemed to delight her. Her obsession had escalated beyond mere curiosity. She now took pleasure in seeing Marcus work tirelessly, unaware of the invisible trap laid around him. Despite the growing tension, Marcus refused to let fear or suspicion paralyze him. He continued to innovate, experimenting with new dishes, while meticulously documenting every step, every ingredient, and every delivery. His focus became almost obsessive, as if the act of creating flawless cuisine could somehow protect him from the unseen threat. Each day was a balancing act, maintaining the reputation of Savory's secrets, reassuring his patrons, and simultaneously working to uncover the shadowy presence manipulating his kitchen from the outside. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Lila Hampton, so consumed by her obsession with Marcus Leone, had begun documenting her experiments in meticulous detail. Every failed attempt to replicate his signature flavors was carefully recorded. Every trial of herbs, spices, and chemicals noted in a small, leather-bound notebook. She believed it was her private archive, a testament to her genius and dedication, but one careless moment changed everything. Late one evening, in the chaos of preparing for a new menu launch, she left the notebook at her own restaurant. It sat forgotten on a countertop, its pages open to the world. A junior employee found it the next morning, and, curious, began flipping through the pages. The handwriting was precise, the diagrams detailed, and the notes explained techniques and ingredient combinations in a way that clearly mirrored Marcus's methods. But the notebook contained far more than mere imitation. It revealed attempts to manipulate chemicals, experiments meant to replicate the taste of Marcus's secret ingredient, while introducing subtle toxins. When authorities were notified, the notebook became critical evidence. Forensic analysis linked the substances described in Lila's experiments to the toxin found at the festival. The realization sent shockwaves through the town. Marcus Leone had been innocent all along, and the person who had orchestrated the near disaster was much closer than anyone had imagined. As investigators delved into Lila's records, a portrait of obsession emerged. Her initial curiosity had slowly spiraled into envy, and envy had hardened into deliberate malice. She had studied Marcus's every move, replicated his ingredients, and calculated precisely how to introduce a harmful element without being caught. The toxin was not random. It had been carefully selected to mimic the flavor of his secret ingredient, creating a perfect disguise. Lila's experiments showed an understanding not only of flavor but of chemistry, a dangerous combination that made her actions all the more frightening. The town's perception of her shifted dramatically. Lila, once respected as a talented chef, was now seen as a figure of treachery. Her restaurant lost customers overnight. As news of the notebook and the poisoning attempt spread, friends distanced themselves, colleagues whispered in disbelief, and the media descended with relentless questions. Every page of that notebook painted a picture of a mind consumed by obsession, a mind willing to risk lives for the sake of personal ambition. Marcus, on the other hand, experienced a mixture of relief and renewed caution. The revelation of Lila's guilt cleared his name publicly, but it also underscored how fragile his success had been. One obsessed rival, exploiting his dedication and secrecy, could have destroyed everything he had built. He realized that the allure of his secret ingredient had made him vulnerable, a target for envy in a world where competition could turn dangerous. The case against Lila moved swiftly. Her careful notes, purchases of rare chemicals, and documented experiments formed an airtight trail for authorities. It was clear she had intended harm, not accident. Marcus watched as investigators reconstructed the events of the festival, piece by piece, exposing the depth of her obsession. The town, meanwhile, began to grasp the lesson hidden within the scandal: brilliance and creativity, when combined with secrecy and fame, can provoke envy capable of catastrophic consequence. Lila's obsession had escalated beyond rivalry into criminal intent, leaving Marcus as both the victim and the survivor of a culinary crime unlike any the town had ever seen. The trial of Lila Hampton captivated the town like nothing before. Courtroom seats were filled with curious townspeople, food critics, and journalists, all eager to witness the dramatic confrontation between two chefs whose rivalry had turned deadly. Marcus Leone, once under suspicion himself, now sat quietly in the audience, a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety etched on his face. Lila entered the courtroom with calm determination, but the subtle tension in her posture betrayed the knowledge that the notebook had sealed her fate. From the start, the proceedings were intense. Prosecutors presented evidence meticulously, detailing how Lila had documented her attempts to replicate Marcus's secret ingredient while experimenting with toxic substances. Every page of the notebook was scrutinized, and chemical analyses linked the materials directly to the contamination at the festival. Photographs of deliveries, purchase receipts for rare chemicals, and lab results painted a clear picture of premeditation. It became evident that Lila's obsession had evolved into criminal intent, crossing the line from ambition into outright endangerment. Expert witnesses took the stand to explain the complexity of Marcus's cooking and the difficulty of replicating it. Chefs from around the region described the precise timing, balance, and layering of flavors that made his dishes unique. They emphasized that Lila's attempts, while technically skilled, could never achieve the subtlety and depth of Marcus's original creations. The experts also highlighted how dangerous her experiments had been, noting that any miscalculation could have caused serious harm. The courtroom listened intently, realizing that Lila's actions were not only criminal but recklessly hazardous. Marcus, observing from the audience, experienced a mix of vindication and lingering unease. The trial had restored his reputation, but it also revealed the lengths to which jealousy and obsession could drive a person. He realized that his genius and secrecy, qualities that had drawn admiration, had also made him a target. The experience was a stark reminder that creativity, fame, and ambition, when combined with secrecy, could provoke envy with dangerous consequences. Marcus, though shaken by the ordeal, emerged stronger. His dedication to his craft remained unwavering, and the trial had solidified his reputation as a chef whose brilliance could inspire both admiration and dangerous envy. The town slowly returned to normal, but the story of the culinary crime lingered in conversations, a stark reminder that even in the world of fine dining, obsession could be deadly. After the trial, Marcus Leone felt a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. The nightmare that had threatened to destroy his career and reputation was finally over. But the memory of Lila Hampton's obsession lingered in his mind. Patrons began returning to Savory's secrets, some out of loyalty, others out of curiosity, eager to see how the young chef would respond to the scandal. Marcus knew he had to reclaim not only his restaurant, but also the narrative surrounding his culinary genius. Every dish he prepared from that moment forward carried more weight than ever before, a testament to resilience, passion, and precision. In the weeks following the trial, Marcus decided it was finally time to reveal the secret behind his celebrated dishes. He had long resisted, fearing that sharing his methods would make his creations mundane and vulnerable to imitation. But the ordeal had changed him. He realized that the true secret of his cooking was not about hiding ingredients, but about understanding them deeply, combining them thoughtfully, and respecting the subtleties of flavor. One evening in a carefully orchestrated tasting event, he prepared his signature dishes for an audience of critics, chefs, and loyal diners, explaining each step, ingredient, and the reasoning behind every combination. The revelation was met with awe. The so-called secret ingredient was not an exotic herb or a rare chemical. It was a precise blend of locally grown herbs, balanced in a unique ratio, combined with careful techniques that enhanced natural flavors. Marcus's brilliance lay not in the rarity of his ingredients, but in the harmony he created, the way he coaxed out hidden notes in each component, and the meticulous timing that brought every element together. Diners were amazed that something so simple could produce such extraordinary results. The revelation sparked renewed admiration and respect, solidifying Marcus's reputation as a master of his craft. Marcus used the experience to teach others as well. He hosted workshops, explaining the importance of understanding ingredients, precision, and ethical responsibility in the culinary world. He emphasized that true innovation required patience and respect, not shortcuts or manipulation. By the end of the year, Savory Secrets had reclaimed its place as the town's most beloved culinary destination. Marcus's story, intertwined with the mystery of the secret ingredient and the dangers of envy, became a legend in its own right. His dishes continued to captivate, each bite a reminder of passion, precision, and the triumph of creativity over obsession. The secret ingredient, once a source of speculation and danger, had become a symbol of resilience and brilliance, leaving an enduring mark on the culinary world and the town that had witnessed both the rise and the trials of Marcus Leone.